What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Champions League recap video here on Touchline Talk. Before I jump in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week on YouTube. Wasn't particularly pretty, but Manchester City get the job done. Second English club to ever win the treble, joining their neighbors Manchester United. And to me, there is only one place to begin here. And that is highlighting the evolution of this team and the Champions League journey. Because so many times in the past, collectively, we have come away from Manchester City's disappointments talking about two things. One, Pep overthinking it, strange decisions, just kind of getting caught up in the moment. And two, their inability to deal with unpredictability, with chaos, with things not going to plan. And I made the point last season against Real Madrid that you didn't see the overthinking part, but what got him was the chaos and the fact that it didn't stay on script. So now you look at this season. That first leg against Real Madrid did not go to plan. They were not good at all. But Kevin De Bruyne gets the moment. And more importantly, what did you hear about coming out of that game? And I think I mentioned it too. They prevented it from snowballing. They gave up a goal. They got a goal. It wasn't a 3-0, anything like that. They prevented in that one moment where it looked like Real Madrid were finding their footing. They prevented it from spiraling. That is what you have not seen from this team. But you saw it there. And then this game. Again, weren't particularly good. Fewest shots they've had in a win all season. Typically, if they only get the 7 shots that they had, it's draws and it's losses. But what did they do? They defended well. They hung in there. And they found a way. And that's a really easy thing to just throw out there. But with this team being able to adapt in a game that was not played on their terms is a huge deal. Because tactically, Inter won this battle all day long. And in fairness to City, it was much easier for Inter to win this tactical battle because they only had to do so many things to feel like they had the edge in the game and were more comfortable because they were the team defending, right? They didn't have a lot of expectations and pressure on them. And so you go through the keys I laid out before this game happened. Did they keep the midfield in check and stop Gundogan and De Bruyne? Now, De Bruyne obviously had to exit early. But did they keep them from deciding the game and being the best players on the field? 100%. Did they limit the amount of dangerous possession City had? Because it wasn't a question of if City was going to have possession. It was a question of where that possession was going to be and what it would look like. Again, did a fantastic job with that. There are games where you can really bother City and just have them passing the ball around and not actually causing much difficulty for you. This was one of those games. There was a moment here or there, but City were not that dangerous. Inter were comfortable defensively for 90 minutes. And Haaland was not much of a factor at all. Gundogan, generally nowhere to be found. You lose De Bruyne. Jack Grealish, Bernardo Silva, didn't do too much either. But you get your one moment where Manuel Akanji plays a good ball through and it leads to, a disorganized defense scrambling to try and cut off passing lanes. And nobody's paying attention to Rodri because he's the least of their concerns when that move started. And it's just a very Rodri goal. He doesn't score that many of them, but it feels like every goal he scores is important and looks like that. They're all phenomenal finishes. And so here they are. And to me, the story of the game is that Inter did so many things well. They checked so many of the boxes, but they couldn't check that last one, which was you're going to get a few opportunities. You're not going to get very many. The argument I laid out before this game that generally came to fruition, I really felt like people were way underselling Inter, and I still feel like I was justified in that. But one of the reasons I felt like Inter had a chance here was they have the players that don't need 5 opportunities. When that one chance falls, they have players who can take it, or in the case of their midfield, who can create it when you're talking about Barella and Çalhanoğlu. DeMarco had an opportunity. Lukaku had an opportunity. If you're going to win this game, if you're going to get this game to extra time, potentially to a shootout, that was the last piece of the puzzle. It wasn't a question of creating opportunities. It was a failure to capitalize on them. And City makes you check every single box. And Inter just couldn't check that final one. To me, that is the easiest way to summarize this game. Because Inter looked exactly, it looked like I expected. Inter performed exactly as I expected. I don't know why people were discrediting them so much with the way they are playing and the way they are built. And the final part of this, on the game itself. The other very interesting thing I came away thinking about. These Premier League teams have got to start using a back 5 against City. There aren't very many of them that do. And 2 of the teams you associate with it, Tottenham, Brentford, immense amount of success against City. Brentford beat them twice this year. I know the second one only kind of counted, but still. Spurs, the one time City actually did beat Spurs, it was 2-0 Spurs at halftime. This game, same thing. Having that extra defender to take away all of the bizarre positioning that gives City these numerical advantages all over the place, with John Stones playing who knows where at this point, and De Bruyne kind of floating around, and the existence of Haaland, it gives you the opportunity to double him. That's how you take him out of a game like this, and that's what Inter did. It doesn't mean you're going to beat him every time. But if I am a Premier League team coming into next season, I don't care what my squad looks like. I am seriously contemplating, I don't care what my philosophy is, what my system is. I am seriously contemplating just saying, we're playing with 5 defenders. I don't care. Because it bothers Manchester City. And it bothered them in this game, and they still persevered, got the goal, hung on for the clean sheet, and here they are with their treble. And of course, the broader context here is the money, the accusations that are still lingering that have not been figured out. And I'll say the same thing I've been saying, which is this is going to determine whether financial fair play is actually taken seriously and whether this stuff matters and whether teams are going to be held accountable. Because if you're not going to hold City accountable, you better not hold anybody else accountable. I just find it hard to believe all of this stuff has appeared and there's no validity to it whatsoever. We got to see what actually happens here, though. Because there's the other part of me that is just very stubborn in refusing to just hand City things. And if you've been listening to me this season, you've heard this over and over again. Because I just think it's lazy. It's lazy analysis. It's a lazy way to look at it. Because they are beatable. And I'll wrap this up by going kind of further into that point. Because it's where I started, and it's, to me, where this needs to end. They didn't obliterate people throughout this entire tournament. Did they have incredible games? Absolutely. That second leg against Real Madrid, what they did to Leipzig. They had moments and games where they were utterly brilliant. But they had to scratch and claw and got tactically outmaneuvered by a team that nobody gave any chance to. That finished third, I believe, in Serie A this season. In this competition in particular, when you're not trying to do it for 38 games. They are beatable. And of course they have a massive advantage. But they finally figured out how to navigate the unpredictability and the chaos of a knockout tournament. That has always been my thing with them. It is a completely different world, and I make this comparison all the time to the NCAA tournament. Plan A, no matter how good you are, is not always going to work. And you have to be able to adjust, and you have to be able to find other ways to win. And that is what Pep Guardiola has finally gotten this team to be able to do. And you see the tactical evolution of this season with the whole John Stones thing, saying, João Cancelo, we don't need you. We're not really going to play with actual fullbacks anymore. And you didn't see it as much in this game, but Haaland dropping deep and then making runs off of that. There's always this next step that makes them so hard to deal with. And Pep deserves a lot of credit for that. Because this is not just a great team. This is a really well-coached, difficult to predict, always looking for the next edge team that also has stupid amounts of money and the best squad in the world. It all can be true. Because if it were that easy to do this, they would have done it 5 times and PSG would have done it 3. And PSG haven't really even come particularly close outside of that one season. Money and talent doesn't get you there by itself. So I don't want to just kind of dismiss this as this inevitability that, of course, City were going to win just because they're better than everybody else. They deserve credit for actually going through the learning process and evolving season after season and getting more equipped to handle this competition. And at the same time, there are all of those fair questions and those conversations that should be had about financial fair play, about where the money is coming from and what that means for the future of the sport. And I certainly am not trying to shy away from that. It's just kind of hard for me to provide analysis when it's just reality. It's not good for the game. And it's fair to be concerned about, competitive balance and things like that. But just remember the difficulties, because there were some, that City had in this competition and in this game. It is not like they just blew everybody out of the water. And that is the one thing I will continue to hold on to in terms of the competitive balance part. Because there's a 95% chance they win the Premier League next season. Because it's almost impossible to hang with them for a 38-game season. This is a different animal, and they finally conquered it. And you can say it was always going to happen, and maybe it was. But there is also a story of a journey here. And all of that story is not happy. There are some things that are icky about it. And we're going to have to see what the next part of this story is, or what kind of the appendix is, with how this all plays out in terms of financial fair play and what it means for their legacy. Because that's part of this too. But we don't have those answers today. So, congratulations to Manchester City. Bravo to Inter. That was a phenomenal performance. Thank you for backing up my belief. City just, there were opportunities both ways, and City took theirs and Inter didn't. And that's ultimately what this came down to. And so now, the question is this the start of a bazillion Champions Leagues in a row for Manchester City or not? Again, we're going to have to wait to see. But today, Manchester City Champions League winners for the first time. That is all for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.